February 16, 2016, regular board meeting of Menlo Park Fire Protection District will commence at 7:09. Roll call.
Director Ianson?
Here.
Director Salado?
Here.
Director Carpenter?
Here.
Director Crawley? Present. Director Bernstein?
Present.
We have a quorum.
Let's all stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Please be seated. Thank you. We have reportable actions from closed session. There are none. So,
Is not reporting?
I'm just going to put it on for the next projection.
Oh, okay. Great.
I thought that we had to do. Okay, so next, public comment number 2. I have a speaker card, or sheet, Steve Van Fleet, is it?
Van Pelt.
Van Felt.
Where do you like me to stand?
Wherever you, if you feel comfortable sitting here. would be
All right. Well, I just wanted to say a few quick facts, because I really appreciate what the chief recently did in one of his letters. I'm really concerned about emergency vehicle access. And I don't feel we're getting all of the problems solved, yet alone even put out in front of us. I'm only starting to become aware of the fact that you folks are going to be the first responders. I'm thinking mostly in terms of something that ends in a hospital visit, being ambulance driven to the hospital. You're going to get there first, then the ambulance is going to come and take us to the hospital. Just make sure you schedule your emergency procedure at the right time of day, right? And not during a rush hour. I think something from your letter said that in the county, there would typically be 52 fire engines on duty and 10 ambulances, right? In the whole county. That fact alone had me worried. So burrowing in via the web, right? You know, I'm finding that the ambulances are really administered by a county agency. I mean, it's a totally separate agency and things. And I see pictures of, in Washington DC, I see a fire engine ambulance, which is a giant vehicle. I see them in San Francisco, I see them in Palo Alto. So I don't know what the future portends. I myself think we need to be incorporating helicopters into this, and we know where they're going to land at the other end of the trip, but where do they land here? So I'm just throwing out some things. I want to volunteer. I want to know where I should go to help forward some of these issues, because I really feel you are the folks that really care about this. Right? And that's really all I have to say.
Well, thank you. Thank you for your comment.
Thank you.
I'm sure you could direct your inquiry and review to the chief's office.
Sure. Yeah, and
The
there's
chief and his staff.
a lot of background about why state law prohibits us from providing ambulance service. And the chief can give you all the book, line, and verse. Palo Alto is grandfathered in, so that law doesn't apply.
Oh, wow.
That's why you're seeing the difference. San Francisco is the city and county of San Francisco.
Gotcha.
And the counties have legal responsibility in the state of California for that part. Sadly. Very sadly.
And if you have any suggestions, I sit on that pre-medical joint powers act that deals with the ambulance service. So you can direct any questions to my email, robert@mellofire.org.
All right. Well, that's good input. So is there a county agency that's been looking at this that I should be
Well, there's a
addressing?
there's a county joint powers act that has all the individual communities involving, and also involving some of the fire districts too. And we meet quarterly. In fact, the chief's on the management review group. So you kind of do one-stop shopping. So if you talk to the chief, it'll come to us as a joint powers group.
So I can address you
Sure.
via Menlo Fire and stuff. Okay. Well, it's respect the communication.
Okay, sure.
We'll have to do more. Take it offline at this point. Thanks a lot.
Okay, thank you.
And thank you for coming. Appreciate that.
Well, it's gonna be a lot easier to find this the second time I come back, but, I just want you to know, I have looked at a lot of your meetings on your videos and stuff, and I think that aspect alone is fantastic. I can understand everything that goes on in your meetings, gee, that may be contrasted with the city council meetings and other things that are recorded in other parts of the city, so. You
No
did a really good
comment.
job.
But thanks for the compliment.
Thank you. All right, let's go to,
Excuse me, sir.
the,
There's a program called the Menlo Park Community Emergency Response Team called SEARCH, where you get directly involved, not only with your neighborhood, but with the city at large. And you can get on the website and get directed and join the SEARCH team. It looks like it'd be very valuable.
great.
Class in March.
Okay, let's go to the Menlo Park Firefighters Benevolent Activities Report.
Very good. Thanks, directors, for having us tonight. Actually, pretty brief report tonight. Just two things. One is Old Tom, back on the road again. So had a little hiccup there for a while. She was in getting some service done, but she's back at Station 6 again and ready to run. And the other one, we had a birth this last month that changed the lives of two of our members. One became a dad, the other became a grandfather. So the Quads, Joey Quad, if you didn't hear, had a baby. So that's all we have for the report. Upcoming stuff, since I won't, well actually we might see you again in March before the Easter egg hunt, but we do have the Easter egg hunt coming up on March 26th. So we'll hopefully see you guys out there. I know you guys have all been there in the past, so there'll be more information coming to you, Chief, and you, Chief, as we gather things and get ready for that. But Easter egg hunt is the next one on the horizon for us, and that's all I have.
What time is that around?
Easter egg hunt is
In
from,
the morning.
yeah, it's from 10 to 12.
Okay.
2-hour event, 10 to 12.
Burgess, right?
Yes, at Burgess Park. That's it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next, we have the report of the fire chief.
Would you like to have my report, or would you like to move to item 10?
Well, I was gonna do, well, let's go to item 10, and then we'll do the chief's report.
Because that way we
Since you
can
are,
get Tim
Chief,
out of here.
well, Chief, you are the prisoner
I am.
till the end. So, Tim?
I wouldn't look at it that way. I'm not, I'm your steward.
All right, so we have a regular agenda item that we're moving up, which is item number 10. Consider for approval a resolution, A, approving the emergency services and fire protection impact fee study. B, approving the fire protection impact fee waiver / credit policy. And C, approving the study to be forwarded to the cities of East Palo Alto and Menlo Park, the town of Atherton, and the county of San Mateo for approval by their council and boards. So Tim?
Evening, directors. Just tonight, we brought back to you a revised fee study report. It had been presented to you before as a mechanism to increase revenue to the district to address new development. What happened was that there was a report done by an outside consultant. It was put out to the jurisdictions of the community for review and comment. We got feedback from various jurisdictions, we got feedback from the development community, different people in that. Based on that feedback, district staff decided to revise the report to do a couple of things. The main thing, as explained in your staff report, is to change the methodology to look at capital costs that are attributable to new development and apportioning those costs to the fee, and then also revising the projection of future service population, which is the combination of residents and a percentage of employees who live and work in the district that you serve their emergency needs for. So as part of the revised report, which was done by staff, mostly by John Hitchcock, who did a good job in this, went and looked at your capital improvement plan that you got for 5 years, projected that out for a longer period of time to get your future capital costs for improvements, allocated those to new development, which are mostly related to certain vehicles, and the expansion and rebuilding of 2 fire stations, 77 and 4,
Correct.
which are the ones that would, due to their location, be most impacted by new development. New development's looking mostly to be concentrated east of 101, both in the M2 area of Menlo Park and then possibly EPA.
And 2 and 6 are not in there because 2 is almost done, so that's kind of water under the bridge. And 6 is not in there because we've already funded it. So it's the outliers that are not contemplated or started at this point. That's why 77 and 4 are in there.
Right. And then the only other thing I want to bring to your attention is in projecting future service population. It's always a projection, it's always an estimate, looking out to the future. In the original report, it relied mostly on ABAG numbers with some input from the Department of Finance. ABAG is the Association of Bay Area Governments, which is largely relied on for growth projections in the Bay Area. So the change was Menlo Park currently is processing a general plan update, and that general plan update is, at the moment, as proposed, contemplating extra and more intense development in the M2 area, which is mostly east of 101. Based on that proposed plan, their consultants have done projections on employee and population growth in the city. The decision was made to use those rather than ABAG projections. It is a proposed general plan. It's been in processing for about a year, and currently the city schedule would have it considered for adoption by the council this summer. So they moved pretty far along in it. The EIR should come out in the spring, and they are looking to move forward with it. You don't know what will happen, but given the progress of that proposal and where it is in the processing and the timing of this, the decision was made to go with that basis, which actually has a higher growth projection than ABAG. And like I said, they're all projections, so reasonable minds can disagree, but the legal standard is there a reasonable basis for the projection? And certainly using the proposed general plan and their experts' projection of growth satisfies the reasonable basis. I mean, no matter what projection you use, we don't know sitting here today if it will happen or not happen. So if you went with ABAG, if you went with what's called PlaceWorks for Menlo Park, either one is a projection, and it may or may not happen, and we don't know that sitting here today. But that was the 2 primary changes, and with that,
Well, and East Palo Alto also had their general, it's also in play. In fact, you know, Tam and I are working along with John Johnston with East Palo Alto on their general plan. We've been working with the city of Menlo Park on their general plan redo. So those are kind of the 2 big entities apart from this process that we've been, you know, working collectively with them. East Palo Alto listed 2010 ABAG numbers. So, I mean, you know, it's what do you pick based upon what they're using? You know, I think the underscoring of the who did we deal with, we've dealt with all the jurisdictions. We have comments from the town of Atherton, we have comments from the city of East Palo Alto, we have comments from the city of Menlo Park. All were concerned about methodology and format under the way that we did this prior with the former vendor. Tim hit it, you know, we give John Hitchcock a lot of credit. You know, we've all sat in a number of meetings together. We've brought in a number of people from the development community and listened to them. Initially unfavorable, but quite honestly, the last several months, surprisingly, you know, working collaboratively actually together, which, you know, is part of my pitch tonight. There's some things in here that we wrote in as well that has property versus even, you know, impact fees. So that was something they brought to us. We didn't bring it to them. So that was kind of a nice nuance and suggestion, which is entertained in here as well. And just, I think, a much more reasonable conversation than the past where, you know, it wasn't unheard of. In fact, it happened to me that the city manager is sitting across the table from me with the developer, and both are arguing with me why we should get nothing for any impact. And I think we've been able to articulate to the developers and to the cities as well, part of what you got on this special meeting, which is you know, here are our reserves, here's what they're used for, here's the purpose behind them. You know, here's the reality of what we get in terms of property taxes. And I think we've kind of crossed a hurdle, at least I believe we have with a number of the developers, that there's no longer an argument that the district should receive nothing, but an understanding, and correct me if I'm wrong, Tim, that they start to understand what the purpose of an impact fee would actually be, and have been very collaborative in working towards what they also felt was a fair and reasonable fee assessed to
Let
them.
me make sure I understand the they. When you
So
say
the-
they, you're talking about the developers.
Correct. So we've had 3 developers, so identify, because I don't think it's a secret. We've had Facebook in the room, we've had Greenheart in the room, we've had David Bohannon, based upon the Gateway Project, in the room. And they brought in staff with them, whether it be legal counsel that we've dealt with, or accountants that do impact fees and have helped us along collaboratively in the process to figure out what would be reasonable. We've studied what Palo Alto did, our neighbor next door, that came up early on. It was something that we looked at in terms of methodology. I would say that we're closer probably now to the same methodology that Palo Alto used and to a similar fee structure that Palo Alto has as well. Just because, you know, some of the arguments that they made early on was, look, this doesn't even match your neighbor. It's certainly a little bit different. I think the big one, I know I was reading Director Bernstein's questions and the concern about using the place work numbers. That's true, we use the place work numbers, but it was also a means to an end in terms of a collaborative agreement that is what the speculation will be, and it is that on what development and growth will look like. You know, and again, as Tim hit on, because I think that's the key point of this, or one of them, is that we just don't know. You know, so ADAG numbers are typically 2010, correct me if I'm wrong, so that's old data. PlaceWorks is looking at what's being proposed today, and I want to qualify it's just for the city of Menlo Park, not for East Palo Alto. The other part, again, I want to emphasize is the major redo on methodology, which did address the concern from the cities and the town. And, you know, the big thing for me here is, again, we were in the room with people this is going to have an effect on, and we've got a level of collaboration, communication, and agreement that this is a much fairer process. So, you know, I feel pretty good about where we are. I know there's going to be a concern, you know, even if this board was to say yes, then we have to go back to the cities and the town. There is a document in there that says, you know, and I think we've discussed this before, so I won't go too deep into it. You know, we listed the concerns by the town of Atherton, the city of East Palo Alto, even Menlo Park, on what would impact fees really be used for. As you can see, there are some waivers for residential. East Palo Alto looked at it from the standpoint of low income and the burden this would put on a house for a house, as did Atherton. Atherton was concerned about, you know, additional fees on residents based upon call volume, based upon, you know, impact. And so I think the way that, you know, we've kind of strategically placed this in front of you is we don't truly see those as significant impacts. What we're looking for is growth within the commercial environment. What we're looking at is growth within a housing environment, meaning apartment buildings and so forth for density, because that's where we see a nexus or an increase to potential call volume and risk. So, you know, I think we've done a very good job in bringing all this stuff together, and, you know, this is our best final product, and, you know, unless Tim's got something else to say, I mean, we're happy to answer any questions.
Okay, so, well, first, do we have a motion to approve the recommendations of staff?
So moved.
Second it.
Okay, discussion?
Could I just have, could one motion approve all 3 of these?
Well, it's one resolution.
Yeah, it's
Yeah,
one
it's one
resolution.
So really the motion should be to adopt the resolution.
Right,
Right, adopt
Right.
the resolution.
so,
Okay.
you want to amend your motion to adopt the resolution?
He just,
Oh,
we
okay,
just did.
okay, sorry.
Lauren just helped us a little bit. Thank you, Lauren. Discussion, Chuck?
Well, I have a lot of concerns about it. Let me say, first of all, I think it's a vast improvement over what we saw last time, and I mentioned this. We were on a track before where we were evaluating facilities and averaging over the number of people there, and it made no sense whatsoever. It wasn't supportable. It just wasn't reasonable. I think we're doing the right thing. I just don't think we've been very sufficiently thorough in doing it. I like the idea that there are some impacts that are just obvious. In other words, if we're building taller buildings and we need ladder truck, that's an obvious thing of growth. Similarly, if we need an expanded crew, because now they require 4 people on the crew, and we need 2 crews, we need expanded living facilities. Again, that's obvious. Some of the impacts are less obvious. What are we going to do about alternative routes? And how do we get to places, for example, and how do we pay for those kinds of things? And I don't think we have any answer on that at this point. The thing I'm concerned about is a number of things. One is that there are some, what I would call heroic assumptions in some of these. Like there's a point where it says, well, there's only 2 stations impacted and we'll just take 50% of each station. But these are huge expenditures. It's a $10 million station, so each one of them is $5 million right there. So in some ways, it lacks the specific support that I think it needs.
Can I just respond to that real quick?
Sure.
So part of that theory, just so you know, it isn't specific, you're right, is you would have to replace some of these facilities anyway. So if you look at how old Station 4 is, what we're doing there is saying we're gonna probably have to build a bigger station based upon what we need to have. At the same time, not assessing the entire cost of replacement to a developer. Just because in the normal succession, you would have to have some of that be done. So 77, I think we discussed, is a little bit of an anomaly, right? It's a station that has many more years of service life left. That's really, I think, the glaring example of, 17 or 20 years into it, you have to rebuild the station because it can't hold the capacity of apparatus and people that you may need, because we blew up the FAR floor area ratio, we increased the height from 3 to whatever stories in the M2. That's a direct correlation and impact. So I would agree with you on that one. The other ones, again, I think this was, just so you're aware, this was the back and forth with developers on show us, where the impacts are going to be. So, there was some discussion about what was reasonable based upon that.
So there's some other impacts that have been discussed. I know Rex believes that we need some sort of a rescue vehicle, for example, and much of that, a crane and so forth, is occasioned by taller buildings. We don't really need that for a 1-story, residential structure and so forth. So there are some things that I think we should be talking about that this report doesn't deal with, and I think it's a little bit premature, frankly. I think it'd be better if we could include the information from our March meeting about future needs and so forth in this report. I'm also very concerned that this puts too much of a burden on residents. It's fine that the developers were at the table, but residents were at the table. And we're looking at residents almost like being tall office buildings, but not quite. We're saying an office tenant is only, whatever it is, 6/10 of a, or 7/10 of a resident. But in fact, for the most part, our residential structures don't require a ladder truck. They don't require the extra fire station for those kinds of things. So residents are paying more of a portion for things that only business is generating the need for. And when I say business, I'm not talking about business, I'm actually talking about high-rise office structures.
So Chuck, in there, I know this has come up before, just to be clear, we saw that as staff, and that's why on that one, you have the multi-page bulleted document, it says if you put in sprinklers, which we know are required by code, we would waive this for residential structures. So there is no, the way that we propose it if you adopt, there is no fee to residential structures. So one of the reasons we didn't bring in the community, I guess tonight we're doing it because it's a public meeting, is because we don't propose to do what actually Seifel and even this says, which is to have you charge residential properties. So that's basically, if you agree, you're waiving any fee for residential. It gets strictly into commercial structures.
Or commercial residential structures.
Well, commercial residential, but it's based upon density.
Chuck,
Yeah.
can we wait a second? Also, the benefit, when we're talking about a ladder truck, that still benefits the entire district, even residential, because there may be a time when there are other trucks out of service, and that ladder truck, even though reluctantly would still respond to an emergency.
Oh, yeah, there
Whether
is
the dis-
no differential between
No,
what
there
we
isn't.
respond to.
Right, so, no, let's be clear, and, you know, you're the expert here, but, you know, let's be clear that every piece of apparatus that we're gonna purchase will still be utilized by not only residential, but by business in case it has to be used. I mean, just not gonna dispatch them just for any type of purpose.
We're paying twice as much for the vehicle, our crew costs are 33% more because we have to have an extra person on it. I mean, I think there are definitely higher
Right,
costs.
so the stations, again, it's for, and I'll let Tim jump because I know he wants to say something, it's not for personnel costs, I think that, to be clear.
Right.
You know, to your point, but it is for apparatus, it is for facilities. That's a true applicable approach and use of an impact fee.
The other thing I was gonna say is, I mentioned that I think it's a mistake to use these higher numbers for, that Menlo Park is using for growth, because that's the denominator over which the cost is divided. Meaning, when we take the total cost of buying this truck, we're dividing it among a whole bunch more people. And so the cost for each development is less, which is what the developers wanted. I don't think this growth is ever going to occur the way they do it. Part of it's to be politically correct. We have to put in the residential numbers to be able to make sure that we show that we're complying with, you know, the ABAG numbers and so forth. So there's a whole bunch of political correctness in these general plan numbers. And the fact is the district won't ever get that money. We're gonna be buying the apparatus, and we're gonna be spreading it over a lot less development than these sort of wild guesses, in my opinion. And so I think it's hurting the district financially. The last point I'll make, and I'm sorry to go on so long about this, the last point is, this has a little bit of feel, I think it could be sharpened up, but it has a little bit of a feel for me that government bureaucracies tend to have, where they're just sort of grubbing for more money. It just feels like, how can we get money? We don't care how much it is, even if it's cheap, you know, let's get the developers to approve it because we'll get something. But I think it's a mistake strategically, because they're gonna feel like they've paid for everything. They've already dealt with all that, and they're gonna have major impacts on this district that they're not gonna feel compelled to deal with because they've already done it through the impact fee. And I'm talking about roadways, I'm talking about access, I don't know how we're gonna be dealing with these access to the east side. I think we've got major transportation issues, and we're talking in Menlo Park about like a 30 or 40% growth in our population and in our business capacity, that is workers. I don't see, how could that possibly be accommodated by the streets that we have, a 40% growth? It's just inconceivable. And I think we got a lot of work to do, and I think taking this, I know we're in a hurry because we want to get it passed, but I don't think it's going to get passed. I think people are going to nickel dime this, they're going to see the flaws in this, which I would agree with, and they're going to throw out the baby with the bath, and in the end, we won't get much of anything on this. And then we're going to have that dilemma of Menlo Park says no, Atherton says yes, because what do they have to lose? They don't have any development anyway. And East Palo Alto, maybe they go along with it, and in the end, 50% of the growth is in Menlo Park, and they say no to it, we're not going to get our money. So I'm concerned about it.
So if I could just respond, again, I'll let Tim
And
jump
then
in.
next we'll,
Yeah, so
answer the chief.
just to be clear,
Thank you.
you know, in process, it does have to go to the city of Menlo Park or the town of Atherton and the city of East Palo Alto to become an impact fee. They have to agree, and they can, as has been discussed in previous meetings, they can make changes as well. So, you know, the reason we selected the PlaceWorks data is because that's the data the city of Menlo Park is working off of. And we knew that Menlo Park, and they've said it, we're not gonna agree if you're not using the same common data. So, I mean, we're addressing issues based upon what the issues are. And the developers said the same thing. So I don't disagree with your viewpoint. That's the lay of the land, so to speak. The other one in there is the roadways. You know, we've come out against some of the roadways and tried to make hopefully improvements. I'm working with Caltrans now, which is separate from some of the jurisdictions. We know there's only 3 ways into the east side. We know there's only so many north-south, east-west crossings through all these jurisdictions. And we know that in the toolbox, if you look at complete streets, they never considered emergency response. Nobody talks about hospitals, how to get to hospitals. All we talk about is bicycles and pedestrians. And even then, the reality of the numbers makes no sense to me versus the benefit and the gain. But I get it. And that's a different animal. We're dealing with that separately. Is it a collective issue? You bet. I don't feel rushed in this. We've been doing this for a number of years. I think we've, again, changed the methodology. I think the report is solid only in that we worked with different entities, we worked with the developers. We took what we had before, we did a complete redo, and then I'll turn it over to Tim. We dealt with legal counsel who helped us go through this, and compared to other documents they've dealt with, which I haven't, other than I've seen Palo Alto's because it was given to us as an example. I think, again, it's as good as you get, not to say that it's the best. I don't know what the best is, but I think ours is pretty well spot on. So I know Tim's wanted to say a couple things, so I'll turn it back.
Next we're good at, Peter?
Yeah, Director Bernstein's raised a number of issues, and one of the issues is timeliness. And I would just remind us that there's nothing that we can do that's retroactive.
That's right.
We can't reach back. So if we wait a year or 2 years or 3 years, everything that's done in the meantime, it's done. So in my mind, there is a sense of urgency. Director Bernstein speculates that the city of Menlo Park may say no. I firmly believe that this study is a good study. It may not be perfect. We could work on it for another couple of years and make it better. But in the meantime, millions of dollars worth of development has been approved and underway that will have a huge impact on us, for which we will not be able to extract any impact fees. I have no problem with sending this to the 4 entities that we're sending it to. But once again, I think in parallel with that, it is in the best interest of the fire district to proceed to designate an area where we see significant growth planned and make that into an assessment district. It's a 2-step process. We propose to the property owners in that assessment district, the assessment district be formed, and then we propose to the property owners in that assessment district what the assessment schedule is. And it's not done one person, one vote. It's done on weighted average of property value owned by the voter. And the chief, I think, has done a superb job of outreach to the developers, who represent probably 70% of the property value votes. If we're looking at the area in East Menlo Park and East Palo Alto where the development's going to take place. I would say with great certainty the chances of the city of Menlo Park approving an impact fee for the fire district are 0. Maybe they're 1%. And hence, I would urge us in parallel with any discussions we have with the local jurisdictions that we proceed with plans for our own assessment district. You look at your tax bill, and here are parcel taxes have been put on there, or impact fees have been put on there by the school district. The school district didn't go to the city of Menlo Park and say, hey, we want your permission to put on an impact fee. If you want to build a house in this area, it's got 3,000 square feet, you have to pay an impact fee to the school district. Not to the city of Menlo Park, but to the school district. We're the only people that are sitting out there waiting for somebody else to give us permission. And that's not the only way to go. And school districts have proved it time and time again. You want to build a house, first thing that the city's going to tell you is, hey, you have to pay the school district an impact fee. And it's not imposed by the city of Menlo Park. It's imposed by the school district.
Thank you, Peter. Rex?
No.
Virginia? I don't have anything. You have anything else, Jeff?
I just had one other comment, and that is, I've been reading the studies recently for some other reason about occupancy of tech offices, and the operational average that's being used now is 200 square feet per employee. Our plan proposes 300 square feet, but the difference is enormous. I mean, it's 50% more workers per square foot, and I don't know what to do with that. I mean, just saying that I think that, I don't know where these numbers came from exactly, but,
Well,
The thing to keep in mind is, when you look at these numbers, these are maximums.
they're gonna minimize the revenue to us. In other words, when somebody's building something, we will get paid based on the number here, and they're calculating fewer employees, meaning we get less money.
Tim, would you like to comment on any of the comments?
Just one clarification. Sure. On the credit waiver policy, so, which is in your packet after the study. How it reads now is for single-family residential and secondary unit residential, there'll be a waiver if there's a replacement of an existing unit, so it's a replacement credit. So you have to first have an existing structure, replace it, and then also sprinkler,
Right.
access water supply. And then for non-single family residential and for non-residential completely, the credit is for replacement only. So I just wanted to make that clarification. And the only other thing I'll say is that, to Director Bernstein's point, table 3 on page 20, does show the complete costs to the district under the proposed capital improvements over the time frame, the allocation to new development, and the remaining portion to be met by the funds. And the numbers are just there, and it does show that under the proposed fee, new development would only cover 12 million of the 82 million overall capital costs that the district faces. So that's just a point of information, nothing else. Thank you.
And I think what we discussed earlier at the last meeting, the special meeting, for those that take, and let's say they take a home down, or there was never a home on a lot, based upon a certain period of time, then there is an assessment based upon its specific existing raw land. So it kind of handles that provision we talked about where it's a duck and cover to some extent. And, I think we've been trying to be reasonable in that as well. So yeah, I don't mean to make it sound like it's all of it, but if there's an existing structure and someone's gonna tear it down and build a new one, we don't charge anymore for that because that's a house for a house. Where there was nothing, that's a different story.
Thank you. Well, we have a, yes, Chuck?
I just wanted to point out on that thing on page, the table 3 on page 20, and this was the point that I made earlier, of this 12 million, I would say, with the exception maybe of the squad truck, all of those things, there are only 4 things attributed to new development. The ladder truck,
Right.
and the 2 stations, I think 3 of those 4, and maybe even the 4th, but 3 of the 4 are due to high-rise construction, not due to residential construction. And I would argue again that I think that those costs ought to be spread over the impact fee that office developers, high-rise office developers pay, not on residents building a 1-story residential structure. I just don't think it's fair, and I think it's gonna come back to us, even though they obviously didn't pick it up this time. But when East Palo Alto, for example, redevelops its housing over in Whiskey Gulch, and it goes from 1 and 2 stories up to 4 and 5 stories, they're gonna see a huge impact fee on that. And yet all of that will be kind of 5 stories, maybe not, but when they're at 3 and 4, they're at sort of normal heights and so forth. In any case, it seems to me unfair to residential when in fact virtually all of this impact is due to high-rise office construction.
I would just take exception with that. I mean, anytime you get above the 2nd story, I don't care whether it's residential or office, you no longer are within reach of our non-ladder trucks. To call it, say it's a residence and somehow, that solves the problem, it doesn't. It makes it in fact worse. Because you've got 24-hour occupancy, you've got the same requirement to be able to reach up to it. We don't carry ladders on any of our vehicles, any of our engines, which allow you to get beyond the 2nd story. And you made the comment earlier about ladder trucks are primarily for commercial fires. One of the most powerful things you can do in a residential fire is get that ladder truck, and you have the ability to be working down on the fire, looking down on the fire, putting water on the fire from the top side. It's a huge asset. And to suggest that the ladder truck is solely for commercial use, just simply I don't think is correct.
Well, so let me then say,
Chuck?
I think I agree with you.
Chuck, Virginia wanted to say
No,
something.
but go, let him finish first.
Are you sure?
Yeah,
Because I have something to say too.
yeah,
Okay.
we would let Chuck finish.
I'd like to say something
Oh,
first.
okay.
He already said a few things.
Okay, go ahead, I'll go ahead.
We're kind of spinning off what Chuck just said, and then Chuck can start again. And then we can spin off what he has to say.
Okay,
As I said before, Chief, all these apparatus and equipment, and as Peter re-emphasized, can be used in any type of fire, either residential or commercial, correct?
Yes.
So the district will benefit not only residential but commercial if we have this equipment available to all residents and businesses, correct?
Yes.
Okay, that's all I have to say. Go ahead, Virginia.
so, this report is, I feel much more comfortable with it than the first iteration, Carol, so thing. But I agree, Chuck, that there are ways to use this other equipment in other areas. I mean, if you look at the USAR apparatus that we had during the San Bruno gas line explosion, we used our stuff over there because we had it available. They are part of the USAR team. So, I mean, it's a lot of things like that where I think that there would be overlap. However, I do think that Chuck has a good point and we should be prepared to answer those questions if the jurisdictions bring them up. Because I think that they're a legitimate concern, but we need to be prepared to answer them.
I think the chief can answer
No,
these questions at the
Well,
proper
but I
time.
mean, in a
Well,
way,
so we
but
did
Robin,
address
but in
the
a
city's
way that's
questions.
not, in a way that makes it a mutually beneficial thing for us and to the jurisdiction. Because I'm not saying that I totally agree with Chuck's viewpoint, but I can see where he's coming from. So we need to be able to give a very informed, and I know you'll do this, a very informed and factual response and understand that their concerns are very legitimate.
Chuck, go ahead.
Well,
Thank you for waiting.
well, that's fine. I just wanted to respond to Peter. I think Peter's right in what he just said, and that the residential for 1 and 2 stories probably doesn't need a ladder truck, but it's only 3 or more stories. Then maybe the impact fee should be on that. I guess I'm trying, look, I haven't studied every single detail of this. I'm just trying to say that I don't think that it's being applied fairly, and I think the point that you're making, Rob, when you say, oh, a ladder truck, everybody needs one, if that finding were true, I don't believe it would qualify as an impact fee. I don't think, something that is in general use for everybody can't qualify legally for impact fee.
We already have one.
Right.
Two.
The study,
We've got two.
the study says you need a second one based upon growth and call volume. And to differentiate, you need the ladder every time? No, but you need the crew and you need the equipment. So I mean, each one, remember, it has a function, right? So if it's a ventilation group or a rescue group, that's typically where you're gonna use it for. That applies to any call. I mean, so Director Solano's correct, you're correct as well. It's kind of a, where's the sweet spot and how this actually works, and that's it. And I would argue the other way, if I'm a resident and I see all this growth and it's now pulling in the ladder truck to another part of town, but yet it's not able to come to my call when it's necessary because we've got all this new development and density and more people.
And they're paying for it.
Right, but they are, the taxpayers who are in this district are then gonna pay for that, or they're gonna pay for the need for a second unit because the developers aren't paying for any of that the way it currently is. So, and again, it's not a perfect animal, but it's better than what we had, which is we didn't have anything at all. And I was just reading today, I got sent by Marie McKenzie, I don't know if you saw that, one of the apartment complex owners, they sold over in East Palo Alto, and I know, so it was East Palo Alto's Woodland Park Apartments are changing hands in blockbuster deal. So, again, we're looking at there about 1,800 rent stabilized units in addition to the other ones that they have. If you remember when Pageville Properties owned 100 apartment buildings over there and walked away from it, that wasn't a very good time for us as well. There's big discussions now about tearing down the apartment, to your point, these apartment units, and then building them as mega units, and then having rent stabilization, plus, the units that don't qualify, and they would make money because of where we are in the tech hub. So they're finding creative ways to do both, but that's gonna have an impact on us. More people, higher buildings.
Higher density.
You bet.
Peter?
Yeah, first on the motion that's on the floor, on the study that's on the floor, I can just assure you that particularly thinking of some of the structures that we have in Atherton, the utility of a ladder truck for a large residential facility fire is immense. And particularly with structures where you don't have ground access on all four sides. If you've got a structure where your primary access is the driveway, and the other three sides you are precluded from having access, being able to come in overhead is just an absolutely incredible advantage. Having said that, when this motion is acted on, it is my intention to make a second motion, and I will do it as a second motion rather than a substitute motion or an amendment, because I want this one to just go ahead. And the second motion is going to basically take items A and B and add to them, instead of sending this report to these various jurisdictions, what I'm going to propose is that we use this report to ask the staff to propose the establishment of a fire district assessment of the size and location that they think is appropriate. So I'll bring that back after we deal with this.
All right. So the first motion, we have, Michelle, could you read the first one first?
Is to adopt the resolution, stated on the agenda, A, B, and C.
Okay.
And we have, first by Director Carpenter, second by Director Ianson.
Let's vote. All those in favor? Aye. Against?
Negative.
4, 1 against?
Chairman,
Yes.
I would like to propose a motion that we approve a resolution approving the emergency services and fire protection impact fee nexus study and approving the fire protection impact fee waiver credit policy. And C, directing the staff to propose the establishment of a fire district assessment district, the location of which is to be determined by the staff.
So we can't approve a resolution that wasn't listed on the agenda tonight, but we could direct staff to bring a new resolution back if you'd like.
Well, let me just look at the agenda. It does speak to a resolution, but I don't see the resolution language.
If the resolution is attached to the back of the impact study report.
Page,
Item 10, back page.
And that's the one that we just approved. Yeah,
It's there.
take your time.
Laura
It's
was
hard to
looking
find,
too.
I couldn't find where there at first, so.
I see the waiver impact fee.
Yeah, let
It's on the back of the staff report, not the regular
Because it's,
report.
Okay.
hold on, here we go.
So then we're gonna go. Okay, got it, okay.
So that's the one we just.
So how do we want me to deal with this?
You can direct staff to bring back a resolution at the next meeting, or you
Okay.
can direct staff to investigate some option.
Do we need a motion on that, or do we just need?
You can just give staff
Provide direction.
to provide direction to bring something back. We don't need a motion in a second if there's consensus of the board
Okay.
generally.
I'd be comfortable with that if my colleagues are supportive.
So you're directing staff to bring back,
A proposal for a fire district assessment district.
And-
And part of that would be, what are the boundaries? And then what are the next steps in pursuing that? One boundary could be like a school district, which takes the entire geography of the school district. Another boundary would be the area where we feel that there is the potential for the greatest impact, which, in my opinion, is East Palo Alto and East Menlo Park, portions of East Palo Alto and portions of East Menlo Park. And given the fact that it's portions of two communities, I think it's totally appropriate that, we consider that as a separate issue and, don't burden those communities with dealing with the issue, those city councils.
is that clear from your perspective, Tim?
Good.
Tim, are we okay?
Is there consensus?
I got a lot of nods.
Okay.
The consensus from nod,
But don't we have a procedure for voting on what we direction to staff?
if you'd like to make a motion in a second, you certainly can, but
If you want that, do you want to do that?
Let's do that.
Okay. So,
for the
I
record.
so move.
Second. Okay. Discussion? Discussion.
Thank you.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
Michelle, you need time to,
No, I got,
you got the whole thing?
You spent a lot
I
of
know you
time
did.
together, Tim.
Michelle, I knew you. I'll let you check. Thank you, Tim.
Tim,
Thank you, Tim.
Sorry for the traffic.
Hey, not on you.
I know. It was up to me, I think the road taker.
Chief, do we want to do the presentation now to Steve and then?
Is he here?
So I have an update on that. So Steve was also tied up for traffic.
Okay.
He's not here this evening, and Chief Stevens got subpoenaed for jury duty, so he also has left. So we could push it all to March at this point, which
There you
saves
go.
us some time.
Okay. Unless Chief Long would like to. accept, No. All right, check your kit.
Yeah, thank you.
So let's go to the report of the chief.
So can we go to item number 9, because Brenna's whispering in my ear, she would like
Okay.
also
There you go.
advance an item here.
Brenda, all you need to do is just do like one of these and go. Okay.
Really quick.
All right, well, let's, okay.
Item number 9.
Let's go to item number 9, which is adopt a resolution of amendment to the Calpers contract to include cost share contribution between the Menlo Park Fire Protection District and the International Association of Firefighters, Local 2400, District 10. Brenda?
So move.
Second?
Okay. Any discussion?
No.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Unanimous.
How easy is
My vote?
that? All that coverage, all
Thank you,
that
Michelle.
preparatory work.
Finally,
Thank you.
yay.
You should have a whole speech you worked on
No,
all day long.
Now, you know, I've got a lot of pencil marks on this thing.
Tell you.
I'm trying,
And also, I would note that one of the things that leads to this kind of a vote is a good staff report.
Yes.
We've got the facts, we don't need to sit here.
Straight up, absolutely.
So thank you very much.
Perfect.
Okay, so
Run while you
we're,
can.
so now, we'll do the chief
Pass
report.
the chief's report. You're welcome. Thank you.
Thank you, Brendan.
All right. So, directors, you have my report. I apologize that the goals were in there twice, but That's how committed I am.
With a mic.
So unless you have,
Well, that's what we thought.
Yeah,
You know,
unless
we
you have
thought you
some-
just wanted to double your work, right?
unless you have some questions on a specific item or you'd like to discuss some of these items, the only thing I would say, and it's one item, which is Stanford Weekend Acres, is that Director Crawley and Kathy and myself, we sent the former board packet that we went through in November, which included the procedural items for LAFCO, up to our community representative today, and she has already met with one of the Board of Supervisors over lunch, and she then met with Martha Poyatos at LAFCO, and they're getting the residential petition going, and we're open pretty soon. We'll get all the signatures, and we can submit both together, and then we'll see what the county's gonna do. So, we haven't heard back on how the meeting went with the supervisor, but
No, but I'll talk about that in my report. He was
Okay.
pretty much stole my thunder on that, but that's okay.
yeah. So yet another item that has gone on for
Years.
yeah, this is
We're
2008.
making progress.
I remember walking that with you,
I know you did, yeah.
a few years
So did
ago.
Rex.
That's Rex, and Rex did it before me.
Yes.
I have a question on your chief's report.
Okay,
On the police chief, sheriff, and CHP commander meeting,
yes.
where you hosted the active shooter planning, how many firefighters do we have that are tactically trained to enter?
So 2 currently that are on the Thames team, but all went through training last week. One,
We've got one that's fully trained.
Yeah,
There's a
Mike's
second
one.
one going through the program right now.
And how many are within the county? Do you have any idea with all the
With
different
all
fire
our
agencies?
agencies, that and
Because I know this was
There's
something.
4 in Burlingame.
Yeah, right, there's, because, I know the sheriff's office, since they run their SWAT or their team, or whatever, was trying to train as many firefighters, and I was just interested, because I have a meeting with the undersheriff next week, and I just wanted to, if I need to,
Well, I can kind of tell
kind
you
of
what
giddy up a little bit.
our goals are for budgeting process that we're in the middle of right now. Over the next 2 budget years, fiscal years, we're looking at trying to accomplish 2 per shift.
2 per shift.
So we have 2 at the end of this fiscal year. We're looking at 2 more next year and 2 more the following year, because the initial training is kind of costly.
Great.
So we're looking at 6 within our organization at the end.
now that's assigned, could be assigned to a tactical team. So, it's a little bit, I think if you're asking how many have been trained, through exposure training, going in on a drill or exercise, there's a larger number, but
No, I mean, actually trained with the
yeah, so they
existing
actually
team.
trained with them
Right.
and on their team. There's one, but there's a second one in place.
Second one more, so.
No, I understand that
Yeah.
there are many that could initially take those positions, but in order to train with the actual original team, that's what I was.
Yeah,
Interesting.
and probably the bigger, it's almost like the CERT issue and, the Get Ready program, right? It's, at the CERT level, you got X number, but the Get Ready was where the focus is. Our focus right now, the firefighters, is kind of that same Get Ready mentality after watching what's going on. If this thing's gonna be over in 15 minutes, as you know, assembling the tactical team, going in, kind of the traditional model isn't necessarily always what's gonna happen. It's gonna be an engine company or 2 or 3, the truck that could go in with it.
Because my point was, we're aware of the Urban Security Initiative money for tactical training for so-called terrorism, active shooter, and so what I'm trying to, if we have 1 or 2, and, how many, and I'll get with you later on to see actually how many countywide you think that we should have, so I can give them some type of monetary figure.
I could ask Chief Kmart, he would probably know.
Well, I don't want to hold up him, but that was just a question I.
You'll be
how
happy
many
to know
we
now
have.
that one of the 2 chiefs reps that are on that committee.
Oh, great, okay.
So, but he's been on there forever, I just arrived.
I know him, I know him.
Yeah.
So, that's good. All right, thank you, Jeff. So anyone else? Yeah,
I
Jeff.
just wanted to ask a question. Are we at the stage where, from that application, that LAFCO could make a decision to give us the weekend acres territory, but not give us any revenues from it?
Well, so it's separate, you gotta bifurcate that question, because it's 2 separate issues. So LAFCO was the one that identified this in the sphere review that we did back in 2007. up until that point, we thought portions of weekend acres, actually all of it was in the fire district, it clearly is not. And, you know, again, it's kind of fingered in there, right? So LAFCO has said, you need to deal with this. We've been trying to deal with it, as you know. When you talk about the revenue stream, the property taxes, that is the county. They very well, we could go through this whole process and end up with zero in terms of they will not shift the property taxes over. So, I mean, I guess.
Would it be
we've
too
said
late
we'll
for us,
process-
or would we have already inherited the territory, or could we
Well,
bail out of the territory?
When you
also?
say inherited the territory, I mean, we're delivering services there today.
Yeah, but I mean, as a requirement.
Officially, it's not our area.
But our application couldn't make it our area at this point.
Well, the application does make it our area. Because
Could they
it's
accept
an
that?
annexation application, which again, explained to me, I know Martha was here to do it, is separate than getting revenue.
I guess what I'm asking is, would we reach a point of no return where we couldn't bail out of the annexation?
I think if they award you through the proposal, the annexation, then, yeah, I don't think at that point, you can't just say, we're not gonna provide service.
I don't think it makes any difference, we provide service to them now without getting any revenue. The only difference is for the residents is that they'll be able to vote in our elections and have a voice in
And
what
be
goes
a
on
part
in the
of
fire
the-
district.
And be a part of CERT too. All of the programs and, you know, the privileges of being in the fire district will be theirs.
Well, I should know from the past, I mean, I'm not in agreement with that, and I know that the board doesn't want to not serve them, but I think it's conceivable that a future board might not have the same sentiment, and so I just wondered if we lost our right once this annexation goes through.
So, I don't know the legal answer. I know that I'll use Sneckner Court, Old Man Sneckner, annexed into the fire district. That's one of the reasons there's these fingers of area that's county and then Menlo and then county and then Menlo, because he was successful in becoming part of the fire district back in the 50s. So, I mean, you know, it would be hard, I guess, to say to portions of weekend acres, because the whole thing is, you know, we own part of it, we don't own the other part of it, is you're out, but you're gonna stay in because you were there before, I guess. So I'm assuming once we get it, it's in the fire district, once you adopt it.
And Chuck, I think the bottom line is that leverage is only useful if you're prepared to use it. And I think it's the sense of the board that we are not prepared to come up to the boundary of the district and stop and watch a fire burning that we don't respond to.
The guys that never do that, they couldn't. They wouldn't do it.
Are there any more questions for the chief?
Yeah, the only thing I would add is, you know, we're batting cleanup on this, you know what I mean? So again, LAFCO's the one that's already made the recommendation that it needs to be addressed. All we're doing is trying to do it, but nobody ever thought it was gonna be this difficult.
I think actually, once it's done, you know, then we can begin to deploy our political resources and see how much embarrassment we can put on the supervisors to say, wait a minute, you know, why should you be getting the taxes for something that we do? You know, we can start on Thursday morning, and we'll probably see some of the supervisors at the Willow Road finger, you know.
Well, let me, so to that, I know some of you were there, Director Crawley and I were discussing that community meeting that we went to. And the reality is, you know, nobody had jurisdiction over the whole area that was being discussed, which was Alameda de los Pulgas, except for one entity that wasn't represented on the stage, which was the fire district. So you had the town of Atherton, you had the police departments, you had the sheriff's department, you had the Menlo Park Police Department,
In the school district.
and the school district, and the only one that protected all of them was us. And we had to find out about the meeting, so, you know, I mean, again, I know most of it was about safety and bicycle paths and so forth, but, you know.
Well, no, it was also about dealing with putting bike lanes on the Alameda,
Yeah.
right? So that impedes one of
And
our private.
roundabouts and.
Yeah, but that wasn't,
Stop
as
lights.
good. It was, but, yeah, and so, but the point is that people didn't even know it was primary route between Stanford and
Right.
Sequoia, for example, right? They were shocked, and they think it kind of changed their perspective a little when you brought that up. But so, can I
Easy.
just address one, brought up? So Peter, getting back to a comment that you made about the residents and the revenues from what I have seen and heard, I think the residents are in support of the fire district getting revenue tax dollars. That's what I'm hearing, because I've been working with that residential group. So I think particularly in Calpers, they just want to be.
Yeah, the key will be embarrassing the supervisors to the point where they acknowledge that they shouldn't be getting revenue for a service they don't provide. That's all. And if we're successful, we're successful. If we're not successful, we're no worse off than we were yesterday.
Well, I think that their message is gonna include that, it's not gonna be separate.
Well, don't forget, you have the Alpine Road corridor study too, so
Right.
again, I mean, it was just by haphazard, by being at that meeting, and now in dealing with Middlefield Road, on several fronts, the county is proposing roadway projects. And, you know, again, nobody writes into these things that route is a primary route for residents in Woodside, Portola Valley, and the fire district to receive reciprocal services back and forth between the Woodside Fire Protection District and the Menlo Park Fire Protection District. It's also a way that ambulances move around the community. I don't understand why these things are never mentioned in these reports, but I mentioned it, and the letter now has gone out to the Weekend Acres folks, and everybody was like, wow, how come nobody brought that up? Well, we did now, but you know, the good news is it's at the beginning of their process.
Right.
You know, but that's not a checkbox somewhere on these things is, you know, I'm always befuddled and baffled by, because, you know, if they start messing around up there, trust me, it's gonna have a huge effect on how we move around, how Woodside moves around, and how we're able to get to people's personal property, let alone the accidents it's gonna create, so.
So, to tag on Harold's statement, I actually talked to one of the main, a resident there who's really doing a lot of this. And I called her to, you know, give her more a picture of how important that is. And so she gets in, and she appreciated the call and Harold's email correspondence. And I think that she's gonna be talking, well, I know she talked to Supervisor Horsley today and expressed her concerns just on these issues and the things that we updated her on. So hopefully I'll be talking to her in the next couple of days to find out how that meeting went with Dawn and with Martha Coyatis, which also happened today. But you know what, I'm glad it's moving forward. I mean, that's the thing, and that the residents are engaged now, more engaged than before.
Yeah, so far so good.
Yeah.
If we get all the signatures, I'll be happy.
And there's
If it would be unanimous, it would be great.
That was my weekend neighbors report.
There you go. There's your
But I
weekend.
have other stuff.
So yeah, unless you have other questions, I mean, that's it. I mean,
Okay.
I think it's pretty much self-explanatory.
Any other questions for the chief? Okay, let's go to consent calendar.
Well, thanks for trying to put me at the front end.
There you go.
Just trying to save us some money, moving the lawyers around, you know, the
I'll
whole
second
line.
Definitely.
I'll
Okay.
second that.
Okay, so we have
I move to approve the consent calendar.
and we have a second
Yeah.
discussion. All those in favor?
Aye.
5-0. Next, we have the regular agenda, which is accept the report on the status of Fire Station 2 as of January 16, 2016. Chief, are you?
So it is.
Or is it Kathy?
No, it's me today.
Oh, okay.
So you had asked, the board had asked that we put these, you know, rather than doing a CIP report, we put these separately because they're upfront, you know, and so the changes are in now. We've tried to streamline the report. It's not, I think, 6 pages long. I want to say it's what, 2 or 3. And it's just trying to give you an update because you wanted a monthly update of where we are. So, you know, it lays out where we are financially. It lays out where we are in, you know, percent of completion. And we're, you know, we're getting close. Hopefully any time now.
Anytime now.
Anytime now. I know, Peter.
Would it be possible for us to set a date for the dedication of the new station
We can do that.
at the next meeting?
Yes.
So people can put it on their calendars, plan on being there,
Press release.
etc.
The whole thing. I will make sure we set a date because we're now on the inside doing punch lists. On the outside, still some issues, but we're working. The landscapers are in, that's the good news.
Yeah,
Oh, there, great.
Yeah.
yeah.
So, you know,
I
John
like
had a
dates,
pretty
I
good.
like, this is the date which we're gonna dedicate the facility. I mean, that gives me a sense of completion.
Okay, you got it. And if it's before that, well, you know.
Okay, we have item 12, which is accept the report on the status of Station 6.
And not a whole lot new, other than, you know, we're still struggling through some of the process issues. But reality is, it's also, you know, it's moving forward. So not a whole lot of progress compared to what we did here last time.
Peter?
Yeah, one issue that's I've become aware of, that I was not aware of earlier, is that we are spending a not inconsiderable amount of money to put in a cistern at this site.
Correct.
And I'm troubled by that, not because I don't think that cisterns are great ideas and water supplies are a wonderful thing, but I think it's a very slippery slope for the fire district to start going down the road of providing infrastructure that should be provided by the cities that we serve. At what point do we set, basically, as it's been explained to me, and I don't want to speak for Harold because he can do a much better job of that than I can, but you know, the downtown area is underserved in terms of water and water supply. If we keep bailing out the city of Menlo Park because they're not doing what they need to do to provide adequate water supply for the Santa Cruz Avenue area, you know, why should they bother? And then the suggestions come up, well, why don't we put in a bigger cistern and an even larger, you know, I think right now we're spending $400,000 on it, and the suggestion is to make it larger for $700,000. And my opinion is we should only put it in if the city of Menlo Park is prepared to pay for it. You know, why should we be paying for the water supply for the city of Menlo Park?
Could I just ask a question about, so I know what we're talking about?
Yeah, so what we've done in the design of the station, there's a water cistern on the property. So it's a storage tank, if you will, but it's subsurface in the ground. One of the things I talked to the president and vice president about was there's a chance that if we wanted to go bigger, it's going to cost more, but that takes us out of budget. Just want to prepare them that could be it. We could be coming to you as the board for that. In the meantime, Peter weighed in and said, hey, look, I'm not comfortable with, you know, us doing that, as he just mentioned. So I've gone to the city and said, look, if you want this to be bigger, if you want us to put in more water, we can maybe do a cost share. The reason we, the fire district, did this is because downtown does have a pretty fragile water system. It's old. Hopefully, if we ever redo downtown, you're going to see it improve. But the reality is it's typically built for a larger residential community. A lot of it's still on 6-inch, which is too small for commercial. Over 50% of downtown is not sprinklered, and in an earthquake, if the water system goes down with zero clearance between buildings, we can burn down part of downtown if there's a fire, unless we're really, really lucky. So what we did was we put a cistern in for about 40,000 gallons of water with a downpipe that we can pull water, at least running engines back and forth, or running a supply line system to Santa Cruz Avenue, could at least try and contain any fires. Worst case scenario, so we're talking about a major earthquake, we're talking about a major fire with water disruption. You know, is it probable? Yes, but low. Is it possible? Sure it is. I mean, you know, yet it'd have to have a pretty catastrophic event for that to occur.
Do you pump directly from the cistern? Does it have pumping in it? Or do you go into the trucks and the pumpers?
So that's one of the discussions today I had with John about that as we're looking into the spec. We can do it either way, but one way, if we don't pump, requires an engine to be right there. Because we have to suck the water out of the cistern and then pump it to downtown to probably another unit that's there, and then have lateral lines from that point.
And if we were to do a cooperative project with the city of Menlo Park, say in Milan Park, they could build, they could build a huge cistern there, couldn't they?
Well, so here's also what I shared with the board. You know, to be honest with you, the city of Menlo Park was the one that kind of started this when we were looking at stations, including this one. So they, instead of supply, they've opted for wells. So we initially looked at 6 as a well site, and they told us they needed a 1,000 square foot building to do it. And I said, well, that's not happening. We're not going to give you we don't have 1,000 square feet to give you. So, you know, that morphed into, as the city said, okay, thanks, how about Station 1? Well, we're on a list for that. maybe be at least considered. The bigger one would be they do it over at the courtyard, which is off of Burgess there. But, you know, the city so far has not considered storage except for the park down the street. As you remember, they were proposing to rip the park out and put storage in there, and that didn't go so well for them. So, you know, right now it's wells. When they walked away with the well issue, we said, hey, actually, you know, we've heard from the board, be creative. You know, if we had our own water supply, we might be able to save something down here if it's disrupted. So that's why we put it in. But, you know, to Peter's point, you know, and to our point looking at it, if we want more water there, we've already asked the city, we'll see if they are interested in the ground storage. So far, they've been interested, they've not been interested in storage at all.
I would urge you, again, we have not discussed this at the board before. I was surprised to see that we were venturing into a responsibility that is the city's. I understand the motivation behind it.
Sure.
And I'm not critical of motivation. You know, and it's like the Weekend Acres thing. It's like, you know, we do CERT because the other people, because the people who are legally responsible for it refuse to do it. But in the case of water, Palo Alto spent millions of dollars tearing out that park and putting in that big reservoir. Why should the fire district's taxpayers be bailing out the city of Menlo Park? My view is that at this point, as before we finalize all these plans and everything, we simply say to the city, do you want underground storage? If you want underground storage, we will give you access to the site, but you got to pay the full cost of underground storage. Because water is your responsibility. We are not a water agency. We are not a local government that's responsible for roads and providing water. And this worries me because now sort of the discussion is, well, are we doing enough? And should we do more? And then we've got another station that we're going to be looking at, and do we do it there? And I just think it, from a policy standpoint, that we should not be spending fire district taxpayers' money on a city function. Now, I agree that we made the decision to do that with respect to CERT training. I think it was the right decision. It's not huge bucks. But if we didn't do it, the cities won't do it. The water issue, I think at this point, we should say to the chief, you go talk to the city manager. You know, and tell the city, you know, if they want water storage there, we would graciously provide them access to the site for water storage, but they're going to have to pay for it. And if at that point they say no, then bring it back to us. But I don't think we should be saying to them, we're going to do the first 400,000 gallons, and if you want to add anything onto it, then you can just pay the incremental cost. I think the first dollar of storage, except that which is in the tanks on the truck, is the responsibility of the city.
I have two comments. One is, I assume the city's charging us for this water too, right?
So the city has its own water utility, it's Menlo Water, but that's not what's downtown. So what's downtown is Cal Water.
But they would charge us for that water. 40,000 gallons?
Sure. Well, when you say charges, if we pull it out of a fire hydrant? So actually, Cal Water's been a fabulous partner. And when we met, I'm sorry, Carrie's going now, but we met with Atherton years ago in a joint meeting, which, again, they're proposing to do this year again. We worked through, you know, they put in additional hydrants. We gave them a letter that, you know, SUPUC, and, you know, they added additional infrastructure. I mean, you know, solving downtown's water problem should be a three-way effort: City, Menlo Park Fire District, and Cal Water. I'm not saying the city's not doing things, but Cal Water's been slowly making improvements on their own. You know, again, to Peter's point, I'm not going to argue it because I get it. You know, our problem, you know, as the fire chief, my biggest concern is the big event occurs, we don't have water, things are burning down. It's just that simple. I mean, you know, the fire truck's no good unless it's got something to pump from. And so that's one of the reasons we move forward. So you can argue, is it Cal Water, is it the city? You know, fire trucks that don't have water, you know, people with no blood in them, they're gonna die. We're gonna kill the downtown, you know.
Let me make one other comment. I don't mean this as so, sore point, but this to me is a perfect example of what a true impact fee should be covering. And at some point, I don't know how we're gonna should water up 5 stories all along El Camino Real with the system. At some point, they've gotta be replacing the infrastructure here. And I don't know when that's gonna take place, but to me, that is a real impact. And it's an impact that's based not just on growth, but also height.
So the good news, El Camino has great water. It's downtown Menlo Park that has
Well, they're
issues.
proposing to go 5 stories there also.
I know.
And that's where, we will end up having some leverage, because when the building plan comes to us, and we went through this with IKEA. You know, East Palo Alto was very excited about IKEA. They came to us and we said, hey, there's not adequate water. And we will not approve that until you come up with a water solution. So there will be pressure points that where we can do that as they develop the downtown. Unfortunately, they made the conscious decision. They went all the way down Santa Cruz and dug a trench to put in irrigation for planters, and didn't even say, oh, while we're doing this, why don't we put in a bigger water main? And they're doing flower planters. They dug up the whole street.
Looks nice though, Peter.
I don't wanna make a motion per se, again, I'll look at council, but I would recommend that we, as the board, direct the chief to take the cistern issue to the city manager and say, look, the board's very uncomfortable paying for this. Do you guys want it or not? If you don't want it, not at all clear we're gonna do it.
Could I just ask a technical question? Is this a steel tank, or is it a plastic tank, or what is it?
Yeah, so it's a plastic lined tank.
In the
We're
river?
we're actually using the specifications. We looked at what San Francisco Fire Department uses. Now again, it's a city entity, so it's not separate like we are. Essentially, they put cisterns all over downtown San Francisco for obvious reasons, not the least of which is 1906 and 1989. So, they were lucky enough to have the bigger fires down near the marina and the boat that could pump and the whole deal, but, and Peter and I have discussed that too. It is a city water department project in conjunction with the fire department.
And a typical pumper holds 5,000 gallons, is that right?
A typical engine company holds somewhere between 600 and 750 gallons of water.
Oh.
Yeah.
Very small.
Okay.
6,000.
It's a minute and a half with an inch and a 3/4 tip, and the tank's empty. It's not much. You don't have water, and we're not busy long.
All right, well, let's get to reports and requests. President's report?
So are we comfortable with that direction to the chief to go to the
I thought that we were.
city manager and say,
No,
hey?
let them know.
I
Okay.
thought we were.
And then we'll put it on next month's agenda.
Yes.
Right, I thought we were
Thank you.
clear with that. Okay, sure. Well, thank you for bringing it back. Okay, reports and requests, President's report. I had spoke to the chief about this and Michelle. Where to prepare, do we have a specific date with the Atherton Council for July? I know we were going back and forth trying to get a date.
I wish that Kerry hadn't left, so I saw the city manager's report. He only heard back from one council member and was still waiting for 4 more to weigh in for the date in June or July.
Yeah, it
I
was
can,
July.
I can look it up for you, what date we
And
had
then
settled on.
what I'd like to do is send out 2 more letters to both Menlo Park and East Palo Alto also, inviting them to do the same thing like we did with Atherton last year. I think it was very, very beneficial that we did meet with them. And so I'd like to do those 2 meetings. And then I'm gonna make a request that all the committees write up what they think their goals are for 2016. guys can do that. All the different committees, like Lomar and Strategic Planning
HR.
HR's pretty much.
Well, Michelle, what I would suggest, Michelle, is that on the next committee, the agenda for each of the next committees, you put that down as an agenda topic.
Since we already have.
Goals for 2016.
Actually, emergency preparedness is pretty much done. You deal with it, report that when I say reports of directors, okay? And that's all I have to say. So next we'll go to reports and requests of directors. Rex?
The report out of the emergency prep committee is number one, we have a strategic plan in place, which was put in last year. We're gonna review that. So we're gonna look at that and update it. That's on our goal. The goals, we split them into two parts, the CERT and disaster preparedness for the rest of the district at large. They're gonna be pushing out more classes, meaning they're gonna be doing more CERT classes, and they're gonna try and pull specific groups in, like churches, schools, homeowners associations, those kind of things, businesses. The goal is to have one CERT class every month. Don't know if we'll make it, depends on how many people sign up. Specific training for CERTs, for their leaders and their block captains and stuff like that. Also special groups like flood, traffic. We talked about looking into a rehab for the firefighters, like a rehab group. So if there's a long extended fire that's gonna last for, and we've had those, for more than 10 hours or 8 hours, is that there's some rehab out there for them, food, we've done that. We looked at the disaster preparedness from not in the CERT mode, but just as for firefighter safety and education, to do the schools, and again, schools and some of those other businesses, churches, things like that. A program for, an FPA program for seniors. So you hit the senior centers to give them a little idea of who's ambulatory, who's not, where they're located, how do you do that. And work with the Red Cross on a free smoke program, smoke detectors, how to install them and stuff like that. So that's kind of our goals for the next year. It's pretty full plate, but some of it's already in the works and it's started.
Thank you, Rex. Peter?
Atherton liaison, I had a really good breakfast meeting with the police chief, and I think that we've got a great relationship. We have a good liaison from the city council. The fire chief and the police chief work together exceedingly well. Unrelated to that, but picking up on Rex's comment about rehab, one of the things that some of the residents in Atherton are doing with the police chief is to try to set up a program where if there's an extended deployment, either because of a disaster or something like that, that we're going to provide the police chief with a list of homes who are prepared to essentially adopt a police officer and provide that police officer with a place to sleep and food, etc. So when they come off shift, they won't have to drive to someplace they can't get to anymore. And work it out ahead of time so the police chief has got a roster of homes that would be prepared to take a police officer for the duration of the emergency. And I think something like that might work exceedingly well with respect to the fire department. And I know that there are lots of people in our community who would be pleased to sign up and to do that. And I've made more than enough requests tonight. I'm not going to make any more.
Thank you, Peter. Virginia?
Yeah, not too long of a report, but the Pulse Point app is set to be deployed on February 23rd by the county. And I think at that time, the Board of Supervisors is going to give accommodation to the Girl Scout who kind of put this together, the program together as her solo badge project. And part of her story includes the fire district and our help. So I am going to attend the meeting on February 23rd with the Board of Supervisors, and if anyone else else wants to go, I don't know what time they're doing the accommodation, but our fire district, they should be proud that it's had a major hand in getting this program countywide, deployed. So I'm very happy about that. And my request for that is, I would like to give her accommodation. Probably in the March meeting, her dad and I are supposed to talk. I just thought maybe once it gets deployed, we give her the accommodation. So, whenever, I'll let them know if you're up for that.
Maybe you can ask her to carry weekend acres. So it seemed to
We're
work better
working
than
on
when
it.
we asked.
Yeah, exactly.
Well,
So-
same thing with the fire chiefs. I mean, one of the reasons to your story, when I talked to her about this project, it worked because it was a Girl Scout asking. When the fire chief said they wanted to pull Pulse Point to the county, nothing happened. It's sad. But it's like, need something, ask a Girl Scout to carry it forward.
Well,
Want something
even
done,
to
ask a
be
woman.
fair-
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, exactly. That's probably why Weekend Acres is working out.
Yeah, maybe get this on our list next.
No, but to be fair, I think that, we provided political support too. So I think that helped in reaching out to the Board of Supervisors. I think that helped a lot. Not that the
And we
chiefs
were
don't have
prepared to-
access to it,
We were
but
prepared to give her some monetary if the board agreed, but she was able to get the
get
county
the
to fit the
funds,
whole
yeah.
bill, so more power to her.
she probably gave Girl Scout cookies too. I'm just kidding. But anyway, that is a really good place for us to be, and so that
Great, okay.
meeting is February 23rd.
February 23rd.
Yep. And then the Weekend Acres thing we kind of talked about. So I'm so happy that's making progress. Hopefully we'll continue to make progress.
Thank you for joining us. Chuck?
Continue my liaison report.
Yeah.
And then we have Director Ice.
Well, the liaison report from Menlo Park is,
Yes, we're all waiting.
I think we got an email from the chief.
just to let everybody know that's on the board, is that I have sent the mayor emails, tried to get a hold of him on the phone, have worked through the chief, have worked through the president of the fire board, and as of now, we're exactly where we are. We have not heard a thing back from anybody. I have no idea who the liaisons are for the city of Menlo Park. I have no information. So it's a little frustrating, is that you try and work collaboratively and it just doesn't seem to work very good.
Well, I would just note, those of you who followed the council meeting, that the Santa Cruz Avenue sidewalk issue crashed and burned.
Yeah.
Reality bit them in the face and they said, oh, this is gonna cost money.
And I still go to their council meetings, but
You're a good man, correct? Peter?
No, I've made all my
You've already-
requests.
Virginia?
I've overstayed my welcome.
For San Mateo County, I just had a meeting with both Supervisor Slocum and Supervisor Horsey, just so you know that I'm I'd be working with them on Weekend Acres.
There you go. Okay. Chuck? Okay. All right.
Public comment.
We have public comment number 3. Is there anybody out there? Okay, that's even, we'll have a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor? Aye. Thank you.
Thank you.
So remember, we have a special meeting coming up next in March.
March 3rd?
That's correct.
Yeah, I saw, so that's in, where, here?
It's here, it's on deployment and staffing.
Thank you, Jack.